What is the strangest thing that happened to you that you can't logically explain? I once was changing pants in my room before work and took off my belt. After putting on my other pair of pants, I went to put my belt back on, but its belt was gone. No one else was in the room, and I spent a good 10 minutes looking for it as I had simply set it on the floor. It's been 10 years and I've never seen that belt again. You should have asked your mom to find it. As a child visiting my grandma's house, my mom, whenever I left the house, I'd wave next door to Ken, who was always sat in the bay window looking out at the sea. They lived right on the coast off the North Sea in Hartlepool. We'd never really talk, but just a little wave before I went to get into the car. One time I'm leaving my grand's house, I'm in front of my mom, who stopped at the door to talk to my gran. So I head down the steps and towards the gate. I turn back and see Ken in the window. Big smile as usual, waving at me. I give him a wave back. He stands up, gives me the thumbs up, and wanders towards the back of the room. My mum comes walking down the steps and asks, "Who are you waving at?" I replied, "Ken." To this day, I can remember my mam's face. She just went white, but didn't say anything to me. It was only a few weeks later when she plucked up the courage to tell me that Ken had died a few days prior to our visit to my grand's. I don't believe in ghosts, but I know I saw him. I can still picture his striped gray sweater with light stripes across it, him waving and getting up out of his chair. There was no one else in the house. He lived by himself. Brains are weird. I 100 believe you. My cousin's daughter, 4 years old maybe, says she talks to our dead grandpa all the time. One time my cousin caught her singing along to my grandpa's favorite song, giggling and running around the room. She asked her what she was doing, and she said, "I'm playing with Tata, and he is teaching me a song." She got so spooked because there's no way her daughter could have heard it anywhere, as my cousin doesn't like to listen to it because the song reminds her of him and it makes her sad. It is also an old tango that you have to actively search on the internet to find. There are other things about her kid that are straight up weird, and everyone is convinced she's a medium or something. When I was about 12 years old, I went up to Lake Tahoe with my friend and his parents, who had a condo in Incline Village. One day, the two of us are walking to the bowling alley and cross a street in a crosswalk. Right before we get to the curb, a car comes really close to hitting us. All of a sudden, we were both up on the curb like we were lifted a few feet. We both looked at each other strangely. Did you jump? No. Did you? Now spent the next hour kind of dumbfounded. It didn't feel like a shove or any use of force. We were still in the street. Then we weren't. Grim Reaper was like, "Oh shit, wrong guys. I'm a firefighter, and we got a call for an overdose around 3 a.m. to a rough part of our district in the middle of winter. Unfortunately, the patient was long gone, and her dealer, or whatever, found her like that when he dropped some stuff. As we were packing up our stuff, mind you, this is an absolutely trashed mobile home, I hear something down the hall that said lights. I asked my partner if he said anything, as it was just him and I cleaning up. He said no. I walked to the far end of the trailer where I heard it and shine my flashlight. I get a reflection out of the window. They have a small tool shed and it had a flickering light. It piqued my interest, so my partner and I go out there. We hear crying and notice the door is padlocked. We cut it, and this little 6-year-old girl was in there. She said her mom puts her in there when she gets mad at her. She said she got scared when she heard the sirens and didn't know what to do. To this day, I have no idea what happened or where the voice came from, but I'll take the win on it. Edit. A couple people wondering about what happened after. My partner and I took her to the children's hospital closest to us, and we wrote a report and ate chips and a sandwich we took from the lounge while they called a social worker. She was a really sweet girl. The voice was not a little girl voice. I 100 thought it was my partner since it sounded like a guy. Edit 2. Sorry for using peaked. I was between calls at work pretty early in the morning, and grammar is not a defining character of mine. Thanks for reading. Hug your kid us a little tighter tonight. How horrible for that poor girl. I hope she is in a better family situation now. I once shut my ear in a car door. No idea how. Have tried to recreate it and can't. But my God, that hurt. You deserve something for this. This one is strange to me because it was so long ago, and I'm convinced I have to be remembering things wrong. I was a young kid at the grocery store, and I saw this toy helicopter like Hot Wheels size that I really wanted for some reason. I, of course, didn't buy it, but the memory of it stuck in my head. A few nights later, I had a dream where I was playing with the helicopter, but I realized it was a dream, and stupid young me thought that if I put it under my pillow, it would still be there when I woke up. After that, I woke up and eagerly checked under the pillow to get it. For some reason, it was right where I left it in the dream. As a kid, I wasn't surprised to find it there, as it all made perfect sense to me then. But years later, I have no clue how the toy helicopter actually got underneath the pillow. Did you ask your parents if they bought it and put it under your pillow as a surprise? In 1996, I had just dropped out of university and was moving home to my parents' place. My tail was firmly between my legs. I had almost no money and no job prospects. Basically, I was screwed. I had an old Jeep Comanche with all my belongings in the back and 200 miles to go. I borrowed $20 from a friend for gas and started the trip. I got to a point that was 30 miles from home and was on empty. I pulled into a gas station rest stop and sort of cried for a minute in my truck. I needed $5 for gas to make it the rest of the way and had nothing. There was no way I could call my dad and ask for help. He was already so disappointed. After a minute, I started searching around my truck for change. Anything? I opened the glove box and there were these paper loyalty bucks for a gas station that I never used. It turns out it was the exact gas station that I was stopped at. $4.70 worth of bucks. I found another $2. Zero in change, put $6 in the gas tank and bought a Coke. I made it home. Fast forward 20 years. I had sorted my crap out and I'm a lawyer. That gas station hired me as their outside counsel. I got to tell this story to the president of the company. I hit a patch of black ice in the dark going 16th down the highway. At the time, I drove a 1-ton cargo van. It hit the guardrail and flipped. Not only did I walk away without a scratch, the car was drivable and I was only 30 min late to work. Edit. A word, do a barrel roll. Cool flip bro. A little similar, but I had just gotten my car serviced, oil changed, tires rotated and pumped up. The works. A week later, I was driving home from a family party and my back passenger tire exploded while I was in the far left lane of the highway. I tried to veer off to the left to hit the guardrail so I wouldn't spin out and hit anyone to my right, but I spun out anyway, across the entire highway, and about 50 feet back into the woods. I must have driven through 20-30 large trees, right between them. I was sure this was it. I was a goner. But the car finally stopped and I walked away without a scratch. They had to call a crane to get my car out of the woods. Firefighters, paramedics, state troopers. Everybody came and asked where the victim was. I said right here. They looked completely dumbfounded. No one else got hit either, thank God. I have a vivid memory of being at the Statue of Liberty as a child on my dad's shoulders, seeing the skeleton of Nike. I remember what we ate for lunch that day. It's alright. I remember the ferry we took. I've always thought about this memory and talked about it, but my family denies I ever went to Nike. I didn't go for the first time until I was 23, but strangely enough, when I went, I remembered everything just how it had been when I was there with my dad. Same, had a Thanksgiving where my whole extended family came to visit from Minnesota and Wisconsin, live in Michigan, but my whole family denies it ever happening. My uncle even taught me how to throw a punch with my thumb on the outside of my fingers so I don't break them. Wife had a similar experience, being baptized twice, once when she was young and again when she was a little older. Her family denied the whole thing. Then she found the certificates, both hers with 2 different years on them, and her family has no recollection. When I was younger, in elementary school, I used to have the same dream every weekend, starting on Saturday when I would go to sleep and then waking up in the middle of the night on Sunday and throwing up. The dream was always a bunch of numbers. Not even anything happening, just a bunch of random jumbled up numbers all over the place. I never understood why that happened, where the same dream would happen on the same night every week and I would throw up every single time. I always think about it and wonder what it was, or if it was just some weird coincidence. Also, I would not have any signs of being sick before or after. Maybe someone else has experienced this. The only thing I can think of is cyclical vomiting syndrome and it triggering that dream. For context, I used to have cyclical vomiting syndrome when I was younger, and it always happened at 6:30. I would wake up feeling extremely, and I could hear my heart in my head. I would then go to the fridge and drink the same juice and go to the bathroom, vomit, fall asleep, wake up, vomit, and then I was all fine. The numbers, Mason, what do they mean? What is They mean number what maces. I was walking between bars in a college town and felt something hit me in the back. I turned around and saw a cue ball rolling down the sidewalk. I then spent the next 5 minutes walking up and down the street trying to figure out who threw it or what happened. I never found anyone. And I still have the cue ball. I had a sleep paralysis nightmare when I was a kid where I saw a red-eyed dark figure standing in the doorway. It has always stuck with me, and I've called him the Bougie Man ever since. One day I was browsing Reddit and somebody painted a picture of their sleep paralysis demon. It was like the guy had painted my exact dream, and then a bunch of people commented that they had seen the same creature. It always makes me uneasy to think about Reddit. Here's a link to the picture I found, but I don't think it is the original post. Might just be a common image to fear, and human brains tend to construct similar images. I've had sleep paralysis off and on my entire life. Sometimes it was super scary and I'd see shadow figures. One time it was these little black sharp-clawed figures crawling up my bed. Sometimes I wouldn't see anything scary at all, but I'd feel something in the room with me. I always chalked it up to just being my brain wanting to fuck with me. Until this happened, I had gone out bar hopping with friends and ended up back at my best friend's house to crash afterwards. As I had been too quiet and I have pray We had fallen asleep watching Netflix on his couch. It was one of those big U-shaped couches, and we were sleeping at opposite ends. I woke up, unable to move, sometime around dawn. The light was very dim in the room, but I could both see and feel the blanket slowly being pulled off of me. After the blanket hit the floor, I felt a cold, clammy hand grab my wrist and start pulling my arm. I couldn't see anyone touching me, nor could I stop them from pulling my arm. I was terrified and trying to do the finger wiggle to wake myself up. Suddenly, my best friend sits straight up and screams, "Leave her alone." I wake up immediately and am able to move. Grant runs to the light switch and flicks it on. His eyes are wide and he is freaking out, looking around for some kind of weapon to fend off the intruder that has found their way into his apartment. But there's no one there. He tells me that he was half asleep, and when he opened his eyes, a tall, thin, red-headed man wearing a Chicago Bulls bomber jacket. We lived in Oklahoma, so this detail stood out to him, was bent over me, pulling on my arm. This man was so real to him that he checked every room in the apartment, every window and door. It took him half an hour to come to the conclusion that no one was ever actually in the apartment with us. The entire event is terrifying to me because we both felt and saw things that didn't happen, and those things matched, just in different ways. So, now, every time I have sleep paralysis, which too no longer happens as long as I'm sleeping with my, so I wonder, is some of this really happening? When I was in primary school, like year 1-2, the cafeteria, there was all these cups filled with milk every lunch. Red, green, blue, but only one yellow cup. Everyone would fight to get the yellow cup like it was the holy grail, and it had been this way for years. One night I had a dream that the cafeteria had gotten more yellow cups in, and lo and behold, the next day, both of my lungs collapsed at the same time. Almost over 50 collapsed, and I was walking around like I was perfectly normal, until I decided to go to the ear for bubble sounds in my chest. None of the doctors could figure out why this had happened to me. They didn't know how. I was just up and walking around and laughing at it. Where did it to answer questions? Where did it to now I'm a Danish Jason and down the wall we show I am a 5'7" thin woman. I have heard it is very common in tall and thin men, too. Yes, it was bilateral pneumothorax. Doctor just couldn't figure why it happened. 3. I ended up having 4 more spontaneous pneumothorax within the span of 2 years. I am still a mystery in that hospital. 4. I was aged 1921 when this was happening. 26 years old now. 5. They did pleurodesis procedure to get it to stop happening. Hasn't happened since. This happened to my brother. He said he was getting a cold, but felt fine. His voice sounded really weird though, and it felt like he had plastic under his skin in his chest crepitus, I guess it's called. Ended up in the hospital for a few days, but felt fine the whole time. Doctors have no idea what caused it. When I was in college, a drunk dude fell from a 3rd-floor balcony and got up and walked away like it was nothing. Seriously, one of the weirdest freakish things I've ever seen in my life. Edit. For those asking, University of Southern California circa 2009. It's getting late, guys. Oh, this is my floor jumps. There's kind of an explanation for this. If you were to completely relax your body, then when you fall the force would be distributed more evenly, thus minimizing damage. This is why some babies can survive falling from pretty big heights, but as we get older most of us tense up naturally. Because he was drunk, he was possible super fucking relaxed to the point where he had no tension, allowing him to do what I explained. I'd him a head out. CA edit. Thanks for the awards and upvotes, but it wasn't that funny, brew edit. Internet validation makes me horny, thanks for upvotes. Removed. I have a friend that had an injury to his arm that caused him to have paralysis. He went through therapy and nothing they tried worked. He just had a bum arm. One day he takes his kids to a water park and goes down a slide. My dad owned a small garden shop, so I'd stay behind the checkout after school till the shop closed. This was until I see a tall man wearing all black like a trench coat, walking past my dad and smiling at me before going into a staff-only area. I jump up to stop him, even though I was 7. This back area filled with new shipments. I turn the corner, but nobody is there. There was nowhere he could have gone. When I was around 14, I went to the kitchen around home for a snack, and the refrigerator door was wide open. Our cat, MacLeod, was sitting on the floor looking inside the fridge. He turned his head and looked at me, then the fridge door slowly closed and he strolled away. Also, several years later, my stepdad woke me up at like 6 am and MacLeod's dead popped in my mind. He then told me that MacLeod had died. That cat was mystical AF. Vets of Reddit, what was the worst pet name you have ever encountered in your job? Envelope. Actually, Darren, it is pronounced envelope. Envelope is the name of the cat in the Sir Charlie Stinky Socks books. They are my son's favorite books at the moment, so I'm not a vet, but I'm deeply involved in the horse world. There's a discipline called halter, and many of the horses are genetic atrocities to begin with. They've been bred to the point of uselessness when naming quarter horses. Many breeders like to create a registered name that incorporates the parents' names and bloodlines. So, somebody bred together the stallion Kids Classic Style and the mare Look Intouchable. The best name that the breeders could come up with for the foal, Kids Look Intouchable. Yee. That's the best they could come up with. Horse names in Europe go from cool like Warblade to straight up ridiculous like Puppy. Whoa. I mean, there are no good names to be had there, but there are some that are at least horse show good. Touchable Style. Looking Classic, come on, people. Some jockey club names are horrific. As a teen, I rode an ox with the G name Impatient Lover. We did not show under that name. The sire and dam had unrelated names, so who knows where that came from. Oh, but Mitch B. Trippin is my favorite quarter horse name. He's a cutter though, not a vet, but an owner. When my German Shepherd goes in, I tell them he responds to dog. His actual name is Dant, and he comes running when anyone even breathes it. But if all I want to do is get him to look over to me or to stop whatever he's doing, I just say dog. Also, he gets very excited whenever anyone tells him he has fat butt disease the office. He pushes you around with his big butt asking for scratches. Vet's office staff seemed very pleased with this information. With this, it seemed very We keep calling his name, but he doesn't get excited at all. Just tell him he has fat butt disease. My husband and I got in the habit of calling our dog Doggy about half the time, so she essentially has two names. My father-in-law didn't realize this, so when he used the word Doggy, incidentally she perked up and came over to him. He was so impressed that she knew she was a doggy. My cat's name is Soup. The vet jokes we ought to start calling him Stew if he keeps getting wet food, since he's a little chunky cat tax. Dude, I have a cat named Soupert. First night I had him, he tried to get into my soup. Was gonna call him Soupy, and then a buddy of mine said no, make it refined. Call him Soupert, cause Soupert is to soupy as Stewart is to Stewie. Raccoon, our daughter was 3 when she named the all-black cat. I still have no idea why she named him that. He does appear a bit chunky like a well-fed raccoon now. Raccoons are just cats with opposable thumbs. Not a vet, but I lived in the Marshall Islands for a few years, and I noticed that all black male dogs are named Lakelamj Black Boy. All white male dogs are named Lamajaj White Boy. All brown male dogs are Labrador Brown Boy. And all black and white dogs are named Oreo. Someone I knew when I was young had something similar. All their cats were called things like Bruin Mep and Zwart Mep and Road Mep, all variations of some color Mep. Mep means slap hit in Dutch, but Mep doesn't feel like it means that in this context. Just brother is still in contact with them, so I asked him what was up with that. We'll update in an edit. Sexy, for a tune, what? Just made the whole consultation very awkward. If you could just lift Sexy up here, please. Thank you. Now I might need your help to hold Sexy down. I'm going to put this in your butt, Sexy, but I'll be quick. One of my boys wanted to name one of our dogs Meat Stack. My son was 6 when we adopted the puppy. Same kid wanted to name his brother Turtle Flower when he was born. Needless to say, he is not in charge of naming things in our household. My older daughter wanted to name her baby sister either Light of Stars or Mr. Moochinbutt. This from the child who names her stuffies after what kind of animal they are. My older son wanted to name his new baby brother Luigi Bowser. He didn't speak to me for several days when he was born, and we didn't pick Luigi Bowser for the baby. He also wanted us to change his name to Mario Fireball. He was 4 and was very into Nintendo. Meat Stack is an awesome name. Old neighbor lady had a cat named Face because it had a beautiful face. She said that actually works great if she has 3 other cats named Hannibal, Bay, and Murdoch. That's honestly so sweet. Odd, but sweet. Sounds like a team reference. My brother-in-law named his cat Salad. I once did that too. My grandmother's jet black and incredibly angry cat was called Rainbow. Edit. I'm not a vet either. I have an awesome idea. The next black cat I get to foster is going to be named Snowball. Next white cat will be a Bonnie. Mom owns a vet practice, so had a lot of pet parents named their cat D.O.G. and their dog C.8. James Bond was my favorite doggy Pekingese. He was hilarious. There were so many Mittens, Fluffies, Spots, and Buddies they got lost in the sea of animals. Worst story was a rescued golden retriever who was so malnourished they nicknamed him Pancake. Sadly, Pancake's kidneys were done, so he died 2 days after he was rescued by the local animal control. The 2 days I got to feed and spend time with him made it all the harder to realize he could have been saved if his family had let him go instead of leaving him chained up in the yard before they left. I hate people a lot of the time. Edit. Thanks for all the love, friends. I still have a picture of him on my phone. Won't forget him like his owners did. They chained him up in their yard and left for good. Poor Pancake. Humans are the worst sometimes. We had a dog named Daichi. It is a good thing kids are only allowed to name pets and not actual human babies. In the South, I was in a waiting room with someone who brought their chicken named Tikka, like chicken tikka. My husband named all of our chickens after food dishes. Kung Pao, Marcella, etc. These chickens were only for egg laying, not to be eaten. That's a great name, Klitzy. The last name of one of my mom's employees is Klitzy. Poor girl, I had a customer named Klitty. I thought Oath must be hearing things, so asked her to spell it out. She responds, sure, C-L-A-T-T-A. I still didn't believe it and made a note to check the receipts following the service. Sure enough, on her visa receipt, Klitty last name. Well, that's definitely the trashiest thing I've read all day. My old neighbors apparently thought it would be a good idea to let their 3-year-old name their dog. The dog was named Dump Truck. Had a client who let each of their 3 children name the cat. The poor cat's name ended up being Hungry Jack Biscuit. Well, was the kid correct? Did the dog have HLS or no? Was an adult. Named a dog Handsome and it is Mother Buzz Lightyear. I'm fucking dumb. My first pet that I can remember getting was a fish when I was about 3 or 4 years old. I named him Clock because I happened to be looking at a clock when my mom asked what I wanted to name him. My 4-year-old tried to name our puppy Refrigerator. My son named his beta fish Correct. Kids do come up with the best names. Edit. My first award, thank you kind Redditors. My dog's name was Freddy. The vet put it in as Freddy. I felt so ridiculous and never told them that's not how he spells his name. The vet tech entered Popsicle's name as Popsicle and I have never been more offended. My cat doesn't even have pedals or anything for riding, what the hell. I had a similar incident with my guinea pig named Iced. They put him in as Iced Tea. And I was like, no. It's spelled like the rapper. Spelled like a... I had a cat named Half and Half as a kid. Vet decided to spell it 1 2 and a 2. Not a vet, but I took in a cat from a family named Lord Wimsalat II. Yes, there were previous Lord Wimsalats. We nicknamed him Wimmy. There were previously nicknamed him Sir Lord. Where, big. What a whimsical name. There was once a guy that was selling his black cat. He called it Astasa. Astasa was a group of soldiers from Croatia in the 1990s. They are taboo today because of the crimes things they did. Didn't Hitler the Nazis disown that group because they found the things they did were so heinous? I had a black cat named Zenga after the Italian goalkeeper. He liked to stand in a doorway and block wads of paper. Some people from the former Yugoslavia were over at my place and heard his name and got very quiet. Turns out there was a Zenga there who committed a bunch of war crimes and had a black panther as a mascot for his unit. When I adopted my 2 cars from the shelter, the staff had named them after internet browsers and search engines. I got Google and Explorer. Another couple got Firefox and Bing. Mine were promptly renamed. It's good that you were adopting your cars instead of buying the cars from a breeder. Man, I hate burros. I think they just run out of energy after naming so many stray cats and want the owners to feel free to rename them. I'd feel a lot better about renaming a cat named after an internet engine than I would about renaming a cat called Coco or whatever.
Like and subscribe for more Reddit content. Watch the next video at the top of your screen.